meeting of the performance scrutiny, which is being held today, Thursday, the 9th of June, 2022. The meeting is being webcast with the exception of any business that the Cabinet resolves to exclude the press and public because of the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined by the Local Government Act 1972. Could I just welcome everybody? This is the first scrutiny committee of the new council. So we're setting the trail for everybody. We're setting the charge, and I'd like to think we'll be setting the example. So welcome everybody. Firstly, can I apologize? I'm not quite au fait with everybody's names, but so if I don't quite have your name, please apologies now, but I shall do my best to be able to keep one eye on the screen and one eye on the papers. Before we get to the business today, I would just like to mention the previous chairman of this committee over the previous council. We started off with Councillor Hugh Llewellyn-Jones from Corwen, who sadly became unwell and passed away, and then Councillor Arwell Roberts continued for his group. So I'd like to express my thanks as their vice chairman for the contribution they made to our scrutiny performance over the last 5 years. So can we now move to item 2 on the agenda, which is, are there any declarations of interest, please?
Just before that, just clarify, we haven't had any formal apologies for today's meeting. You will also note that there should be 11 members on this committee. To date, we haven't had the full nominations from all the groups. So we currently have 8 members today, and one of whom isn't in attendance. So, but we are quorate and continue.
Thank you. Item 3 then is to appoint a vice chair for the committee, please. Sorry, yes, sorry, I missed that. Declarations of interest. Does anybody wish to declare a personal or prejudicial interest in the business identified to be considered at the meeting?
Just for clarity, you'll be aware of the requirement under the Council's Code of Conduct to declare any personal or prejudicial interests in respect of any business to be considered at today's meeting. Such interests should be declared now or as soon as the councillor affected becomes aware that they have a personal or prejudicial interest in today's business. All members declaring an interest are required to state clearly what that interest is and to advise whether it is a personal or a prejudicial interest, as defined in the Code of Conduct. Any member declaring a prejudicial interest is required to leave the chamber for the duration of the business and to take no part in the proceedings. Members with a personal interest only may take part in the debate and on any vote. If a personal or prejudicial interest is declared today that has not previously been disclosed and recorded, the councillor concerned will be required to complete and sign a declaration of interest form, which is available from the committee support staff.
Thank you. No declarations of interest? No. No. Item 3 then is to appoint a vice chair of the committee, please. Are there any nominations? Ellie Chard, Councillor Chard.
I'd like to propose Councillor Gareth Sandiland as vice chair. And I do know from 2012 to 17 he was vice chair on performance. I believe. Okay.
Thank you. Is there a second for that, please? Yes, I see a hand up. Oh, it's yes. Sorry, it's Carol Holiday. Yes, there's no name. Yes, so that's been moved by Councillor Chard, seconded by Councillor Holiday. Are there any other nominations, please?
Yeah.
Right. So I think could we indicate those in favour, please? Anybody against? Councillor Sanders, are you happy to take the appointment?
Well, I was just going to say, can I? I'll accept that. Thank you very much, Councillor Irving. Good. And it's been nice to be recognised by our fellow councillors. So thank you. Yes. I'll be acting fairly and independently if I ever become, if Hugh is ever ill or anything like that. But thank you very much once again for your support.
Thank you, Gareth. I think we've worked before, and I'm sure we can work again together. Thank you. Thank you. Right, thank you. Item 4 then. Are there any urgent matters? I haven't been notified of any. Do we have any, Rhian?
No, I haven't been notified of any either.
Fine, thank you. Item 5, minutes of the last meeting, which are on page 9 in your pack. If I could take you through them, please. Firstly, if I could take you through them item by item for accuracy. So the first page. Is that? Yeah, no, it's this one first, isn't it? Yeah, sorry about that. I've just been given an extra sheet of minutes. Thursday, the 17th of March. Item 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, page 11, and page 12, page 13, and page 14, item 6, and page 15, item 7. So I know it's just difficult because an awful lot of us here today weren't there on that particular day. Is everybody that was there happy with it?
Yes.
We moved my card. I'm happy to second from the chair. Okay.
Thank you, Hugh.
Thank you. Can then move then to
Just get everybody to show.
yes, everybody happy, everybody in favour of that? Could you just show, please? Yeah, fine. Thank you, everybody. Right, thank you. And I've just had another sheet of minutes.
Just for you to sign them.
Oh, sorry, that's just for signature. I'm sorry. Right, we can now move then, please, to item 6 on the agenda, which is the Council Performance Self-Assessment Report for 2021 and 2022. So that's going to be presented by the lead member, supported by the Chief Officer at the moment for that service, Nicola Neal. Thank you. And that will, we need therefore to go to page 17, please, members. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr, Gadeirydd. Dwi'n mynd i roi cyflwyniad byr iawn i'r adroddiad yma. Mae'n adroddiad gynhwysfawr, werthfawr iawn i ni fel cyngor wrth edrych yn ôl, ond hefyd wrth edrych ymlaen a sut i symud ymlaen. Mi hoffwn i jyst, a da chi wybod, mae Iola McGregor sy'r awdur yr adroddiad. Diolch yn dda heddiw, felly diolch yn gallu bod yma. Bod Nicola'n hollol adal i ateb yr rhan fwyaf o'r cwestiynau, mae'n bosib ella fydd rei o'ch cwestiynau chi sydd fwy am y manylion ddim yn gallu cael ei ateb heddiw, felly dwi'n gobeithio newch chi ddallt hynny. Felly ar y nodyn yna roi drosodd i Nicola. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Diolch, Councillor Ellis, and bore da pawb. Here today to talk to you about the Council's quarterly performance report and self-assessment reports, and the purpose of presenting them to you as performance scrutiny today is one of the recommendations will be to ask you to approve the content so that we can take this forward to Council later in July. This is a report that will come to performance scrutiny 4 times a year. We produce quarterly performance reports, and the reports that we produce at quarters 1 and quarters 3 are always circulated to both Cabinet and to performance scrutiny for information and email discussion. And at quarters 2 and 4, they are tabled for more in-depth discussion at committees. The performance reports focus on our performance against our corporate plan. And our corporate plan serves a few pieces of legislation. First of all, it covers the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, so contains our wellbeing objectives. It also meets the requirements of the Equality Act, so it covers our equality objectives. And more recently, the reports also cover the requirements of the Local Government and Elections Act. So there is a sections within the report that focus not just on our corporate plan, but also the latter half of the report focuses on corporate health and that is a requirement of the Local Government and Elections Act, which asks us to summarise our performance and the strengths and the challenges that we face across some of the key governance areas of the council. So those areas that help us to run the council effectively, such as performance management, risk management, financial management, etc. Attached to the report that you've got today are 3 appendices. The first one is a corporate self-assessment. This is a statutory document and is a fairly new legal requirement, again under that Local Government and Elections Act, which asks us to produce a short summary and a summative evaluation of our performance, both against our corporate plan and those governance areas that I mentioned before. It draws on information that has been tabled through committees throughout the year. That could be the quarterly performance reports, of which an example you'll receive today. It will also be the annual governance statement, statement of accounts, social services director's report, and also it will reference media coverage that we've had during the year. So it's a statutory document, an important one, and we hope that there's a lot of information that's provided to you in the quarterly performance report that's really rich, but that self-assessment really cuts through the heart of some of the commentary that we provide as well, and is a useful highlight and summary document. What I would like to do today is just give you some highlights from the headings really that are covered in both the quarterly performance report that you've got at Appendix 2 and also covered in the self-assessment. So first of all, in terms of equality, some of the highlights from this year, we've produced an interim strategic equality plan, and we've also introduced measures to support accessibility and diversity in democracy. You'll know today is a hybrid meeting, and we hope that measures like that will enable greater participation in democracy. Also on the subject of equality, this year we've undertaken a really comprehensive research and engagement exercise on the experiences of those people who live with protected characteristics. This has informed a wellbeing assessment that we've produced, which is a statutory instrument and is something on which we're required, something that we're required to use to develop our corporate plan. What we have recognised really through doing that work is that there is probably an opportunity for us to improve our ongoing engagement and understanding of the challenges faced by people with protected characteristics. So this is something that we think would be worth building on over the next few years. In terms of housing, we set ourselves ambitious targets in the previous corporate plan, and against which we're largely making good progress, and in some cases exceeding the goals that we set ourselves as well. For example, in relation to the supply of affordable homes. Nevertheless, though, in terms of housing, demand continues to outstrip supply, and this is a long-term challenge for us. It's particularly challenging when we consider homelessness prevention as well, and that's something that you'd see come through the statistics. Another priority that we had in the current corporate plan is under the title of Connected Communities. This largely focuses on the infrastructure in the county, both physical in terms of roads and bridges, and also digital and digital skills that we've got. There's been a lot of support for people over the last few years to help to reduce digital exclusion. Our libraries and other projects that we've run have really helped to support people with to sharpen up their skills in terms of digital use, and also they've taken the opportunity for some intergenerational working under that kind of banner as well. However, digital connectivity, although it has improved, it still lags behind our ambition for our communities. So, which is a key finding from our wellbeing assessment, and which might well be something that the new council will want to focus on as well. In terms of road condition, we've seen an improvement in the overall statistics around the condition of roads in Denbighshire, but the ongoing investment that's required to either maintain or improve that situation is significant. And we also need to ask whether the road conditions that we are working with meet the expectations of our residents. Another priority we've got is around resilient communities, and this is around the council supporting both independent resilience and community resilience. So some of the key achievements over recent years include the fact that we have become a council that's officially working towards being dementia friendly. We've received that accreditation in conjunction with the support of the Alzheimer's Society. Under resilient communities, actually, I think it's a good example of a priority where we do a lot of partnership working. We work a lot with the third sector and also grassroots sector to deliver for our communities, and also to raise awareness of some issues such as domestic abuse. However, we do face some challenges. Care is a particular challenge for us at the moment, both in terms of the affordability of resourcing the provision of care, and also in terms of capacity and recruitment. We've been facing some challenges in that field as well as others. However, recently we have launched a carer strategy in recognition of the important work that carers do. And we've developed that strategy in conjunction with carers as well. So we think that's a good example of co-production and working closely with our communities. In terms of the environment, we've made great strides with this particular topic over the last few years. There's been extensive tree planting across the county. There's been multi-million pounds worth of investment in flood prevention. And we've also developed a climate and ecological change strategy, which has 3 core strands of work in it. One of the ambitions within that strategy is to become a net zero carbon organisation by 2030. Another is to enhance biodiversity across the county. And the third key strand of work under that strategy is for us to reduce emissions from our supply chain. So looking at what we can do with procurement, with our procurement powers, really, to reduce carbon emissions and support that zero carbon agenda that we have. I should emphasise how challenging that target of being a net zero carbon organisation by 2030 is. We've done much work, but there is much more work to be done, and some key changes and probably levels of investment that we'll be looking to implement over the next few years in order to ensure that we're on track to achieve our goals. Finally, in terms of the corporate plan priorities, we've got a priority around supporting young people. That's both in terms of academic attainment and also well-being. Young people have been particularly impacted on a number of fronts from the pandemic. The impact of the pandemic on attendance and timetabling in schools is really likely, we anticipate, to have exacerbated inequality in terms of attainment, and will continue to pose a challenge for us over the next few years. That's also for our schools combined with the introduction of a new curriculum. So there's a lot of work that we acknowledge that schools will need to undertake. So that attainment will continue to be a focus for us. But if we look at the well-being side, we've had some successes in working closely with young people through schools, etc., to examine their well-being and equip them for the world of work in the future by offering work experience opportunities. So that's one section of the self-assessment that I've covered, which is a review against our corporate plan. I'd also like to cover some of those corporate governance functions that I mentioned earlier. So there are 7 functions, and they are laid out really within the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, and that's what we've aligned ourselves to here in terms of the review. In terms of corporate planning then, we've been meeting new and recurring legislative requirements, It's always a busy time of year, a change of council in terms of strategic planning. We've undertaken a significant research exercise over the past 12 months, which will help the new council to develop its new corporate plan. We've also put in arrangements for responding to the new UK government funds under the Levelling Up agenda. So there's a significant amount of work that has taken or is taking place for us to respond to the Community Renewal Fund, the Levelling Up Fund and the Shared Prosperity Fund. There are also, in terms of the way the council is structured, you'll know that there are some plans in place to restructure our senior leadership team, and that will be done over the course of the next year. In terms of financial planning, overall, our processes are strong, and that's been confirmed both by internal audit opinion, and we are also heavily regulated by external auditors in this field. We have moved towards 3 to 5 year budgeting, which will really help our services to plan, at least for the medium term, despite us seeing significant budget variations. There are some significant challenges that we do foresee, though, in terms of finance over the next few years, not least the rate of inflation and some pressures on our services due to cost of living crises, which are in the news at the moment. In terms of performance management, we have got effective project management arrangements in place, and that's been confirmed by Audit Wales. We've recently strengthened and altered our performance reports to reflect the requirements of the Local Government and Elections Act. And in the future, we'll be reviewing our performance management framework in light of the new corporate plan and the governance arrangements in relation to that. Something that members will also be interested in is on a less formal basis, as well as evaluating our progress against our corporate plan. Each service has its own plan, its own business plan, departmental plans, and we do have processes in place for overseeing those as well. So we'll be resurrecting our service performance challenge process this year. Risk management is on our agenda for this meeting today. Recently, over the past 12 months, that's been subject to an internal audit review, and I'm pleased to say that it received a medium assurance with some good recommendations that we've already implemented. We do carry a significant number of risks, especially in light of significant changes in our communities over the last 12 to 18 months, but we'll be able to talk about that on the agenda later. Workforce planning. In order for us to deliver successfully, it's really crucial that we've got the right people in place. And the recent, since COVID, I think that in common with most organisations across the UK, we are facing some challenges in terms of recruitment. But there is work being undertaken to review our options in relation to that. We do have strong workforce planning arrangements in place, and a significant piece of work that the council is implementing at the moment in terms of its workforce is a new ways of working project. That's looking at our arrangements for home working, business travel, how we conduct meetings. So, you know, the conducting of hybrid meetings is a significant development under that branch of work. And I think this is a really good example as well about how some of the projects that we do deliver benefits across or have interdependencies with our broad strategy. So, for example, hybrid meetings support our goals around equality in terms of inclusion and accessibility and participation in democracy. Not only that, but reducing the need to travel and to commute also supports some of our ambitions under the net zero carbon work that we've prioritised. In terms of our assets, we face some significant challenges. I alluded to earlier about the fact that one of our priorities is around our road and bridge network, and that's in need of continual investment. However, it is a positive that the council has committed to a certain level of investment over the next 5 years. The carbon agenda will also be a huge challenge for us when we think about our assets in terms of our office buildings and also our school buildings. And finally, the last governance area that I wanted to talk to you about was procurement. So the team there has made improvements to advice and support available to services and is encouraging good procurement practice. That's on the back of some internal audit work, and I know that the team is working both from the legal service and also the finance service, so they're working across they're working corporately to try to enhance and improve the service and advice that is that comes from the procurement team. There have been some decarbonisation actions that have been hampered due to management capacity. So there is an ambition for us to recruit some expertise in terms of helping us to achieve that goal of reducing carbon from our supply chains. But we are introducing a new procurement strategy, and that should be in place by the end of summer. Okay, so that's an introduction to some of the highlights from the in-depth reports that you've received. Happy to take any questions. Diolch.
That extremely clearly, and you've covered a lot of ground in a relatively short period of time. So I think now, having got your report in front of us and heard what you've had to say, I'm going to open this to questions. Firstly, in the room, Paul, have you got any questions you want to? Oh yeah, I can see John Harland's hand up. Yes, please, Councillor John. Yep, yep. Can you hear me?
Thank you, Hugh,
That's
and
fine.
thanks for the report delivered there. I put a number of questions to the staff there, and thank you, RHAN, for responding to the questions on your staff prior to the meeting regarding the annual report. If I may, I'll just run through them as briefly as I can without referring to every single word that was in reply. But on page 47 and 51 of the annual report, it refers to decarbonisation of travel and project brief, travel to work, education. There was no mention of any implementation of any active travel plans, which from our perspective was a glaring omission. However, I've received a reply saying that the sustainable transport plan is under development and will take account of provision for active travel. I was just wondering when that sustainable transport plan will come to fruition. What's the timescales on that, really? So if somebody could answer that question for me.
Take all.
I've also
make a list.
sorry. Yeah, it's a list. Yeah, it's a list, Hugh. Yeah, number of different things. Page 64. 3,500 trees have been planted in the last year, I think, as per annual report. But I know from a Freedom of Information request some months ago, there's no monitoring system for these trees. They're aftercare. The reply I received was that going forward, all trees planted under the climate and ecological change strategy on council land will be monitored and maintained for the first 18 months. So that's positive. So I don't really require an answer to that one. Page 71, the supply chain for school meals. We feel we should be aiming for the eradication of plastics altogether. Ellie referred to that before, which was good to hear from Ellie. The reply I received was we get an additional £200,000 a year from the sales of these drinks in schools, which are delivered in plastics. So I sense that the council maybe are reluctant to change policies regarding plastic drinks containers on the basis of the income that's received from that. I would strongly argue, and I would like the committee to actually maybe discuss this and maybe put a vote, take it to a vote on it, that if that's possible, that we seek other revenues, you know, and eradicate plastic from the system altogether. I don't think that's a good enough argument in these times to retain plastic as a vessel in which to transport stuff, you know, from a council perspective. I think we should be better than that, really. So maybe we could have a vote on that. There was also on page 72 a reference to diseased larch trees, which should not be, I don't think they should be used for wood fuel in their disposal. I don't think trees should be used for wood fuel at all. I accept many people use fuel now, and I think unless they're persuaded not to, they're going to be going to wood fuel more and more in these times, which could reduce the actual tree stock, certainly in the county, on private land maybe, you know, but you know, we still need them to reduce carbon emissions. The council, the reply received, the council has no control over this felling operation because it was done on private land, and it was done under the behest of National Rivers Wales, and it was a local contractor. But you know, I would, as an aside to that, I would like us to maybe agree as a scrutiny, if it's possible from a scrutiny committee direction, that we shouldn't be either involved directly or indirectly with contractors who burn any type of wood product or sell them off as logs to private people to use in their wood burners. I would like us to agree to that, maybe, if that's possible here today. Page 73, there was tree planting issue. I questioned that the Clwydian range maybe should have an active tree planting plan to return the environment to how it was possibly many years ago, where it was actually covered with trees. We look at it is an outstanding area of national beauty, but in actual fact, trees have been removed from those areas because of grazing animals. You know, we look at basically denuded areas of moorland, for instance, as beautiful, but they actually have had trees removed by grazing animals over well, many hundreds of years, really. And I think we should be planting trees in areas where, you know, where they don't exist and they're considered beautiful. But I think where we own the land, we should actually be having a tree planting program. The reply I got for that was the ANOB team have taken every opportunity to plant trees or encourage community groups to do the same. And tree planting has largely taken place on publicly owned land. So, you know, that was a positive response. I noticed current planning policy as well in the reply precludes onshore wind turbines within ANOBs, and any change to that is not a local decision, because I personally don't see that we should be disallowing the production of wind turbines and the implementation of wind turbines in any area. I don't think any area should be off limits, even on grounds of supposed beauty or whatever. If we think about pylons across the country, the electrical pylons, they could be viewed to be horrendous, but we don't seem to talk about them as being awful to view, because we've accepted them over a number of years. And I would argue that we will do the same. So I feel that we should be, certainly as a council, you know, considering wind turbines onshore and not necessarily offshore all the time. I think our views have to change. I won't keep you much longer here. On page 86, the media monitoring, it said only 9% negative stories about the council. I questioned how these figures were got at, because media monitoring really has changed over the last sort of 5-10 years, or it should change anyway, because most people now engage with Facebook, Twitter, social media. The traditional methods of media have changed. A lot of people don't, I'd argue the majority of people don't get a newspaper even now. And I think the council should re-examine the way they're looking at media. The answer I got was we use the traditional media as an indicator of general reputation of the council, which is common practice across the sector. I mean, I would argue that we need to change those ways of monitoring to adapt to the modern times. Page 86, only 36 of the council spend was with local suppliers. I feel this should be increased dramatically and not only done on the basis of cost alone. The reply I received for that was a new procurement strategy will be presented to councils for approval in the summer, which may be an opportunity to call the item in for further scrutiny. So that was a positive response there. So I hope we can get this debate, the two things debated really. I'd like an answer to the sustainable transport plan, when it's going to be actually produced, and certainly the plastic drinks issue, to seek other revenues. So those two things really. If you know, I went around the houses with the other issues to explain to you what answers I'd received prior to this meeting. So I hope you appreciate that. Thank you.
Those are your two principal questions.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Right. I noticed Gareth Sandland's got his hand up.
Yeah, it's two separate issues up from the report. Do you want to take John's first while we're on it, or do you want me to go into something different?
The lengthy address there. Yes. Yeah, I think RHAN wants to just draw our attention to something, please.
Just on the point of the plastics issue and schools. Just to be clear, this committee can't take a decision. It's a scrutiny committee. It can only make recommendations. Now, scrutiny in the last council made recommendations following the work of a task and finish group with regards to plastics. That's where the use of plastics and those plastic cups have gone from county offices. It then progressed to look at school meals, which was a very complex area. COVID struck. There was a delay because of that. But it did take a report to Cabinet, I think it was February this year, March, was it? Sorry, it was March this year, regarding trying to reduce the use of those plastics and the income that we were getting from selling plastic water bottles in school to help with the school meals budget. I know Councillor Hilditch Roberts is here, who's the former lead member for education, so he may want to contribute in a minute. But the crux of that was that the Cabinet decided that, in principle, they basically agreed with it, but at this moment in time, they couldn't afford not to do that. And they are lobbying the Welsh local authorities and the Welsh Government and the WLGA as well, I think, to try and get all schools to move away from the dependency on this kind of income coming in.
Thank you. Just as RHAN was saying, we did actually have a task and finish group in the last council, which specifically looked at plastics and school meals, and we had a number of presentations from the officers in that service. So the conclusions of that task and finish group have gone through the council, through Cabinet, haven't they? I think. Yeah. So I think where we are today, we can't make a decision today, but within our recommendations today, we can include some of your suggestions, if the committee will support that they be considered further as we go down the line. But Hilditch Roberts is here. So I don't know who, because you were a lead member in that authority. Do you have a contribution you'd like to make?
Yeah. Just to be clear, we brought a paper to Cabinet following the trial at Ysgol Glan-Clwyd in St Asaph. And when you do the figures, off the top of my head, I think is about 220,000 net. It was that the income that is derived from the sales of drinks in plastics. And at the time, and it's still the time, is that there is a significant change in the school meals approach to throughout Wales, with the free meals being given to all children in primary schools, and there's a review, I think, also of secondary schools. So there's been an increased cost in buildings and kitchens, which has had a knock-on effect. So fundamentally, the appetite in the last administration was certainly there to actually, get rid of plastics if possible. But unfortunately, the budget wasn't there at that time when there was cuts. So going forward, and this is difficulty, I think, when you come to scrutiny and you're new in post, it's only recommendations to Cabinet that come from this arena. My advice would be, if you feel strongly that you want to ask the budget, is that you actually put a motion to full council around this area, and then therefore something can be done on the back of that, which would be around the budget and the ambition of this administration, how far they want to take it forward. So, I think the best example is one of our headmasters was so committed to doing this, but when the finances came into play, that ambition was taken away a little bit because of the complexity around it. So I think the ambition is here, but it's the bang is in the buck, and you need to find the buck, and you've got to ask a new Cabinet for that, I think, now.
Nicola, do you wish to make a response to these various points that John Harlan's raised?
I think that the plastics issue has been covered. I would echo everything that RHAN and Councillor Hilditch Roberts have said. In terms of this timescale for the sustainable travel plan, I will need to get back to you, Councillor Harlan, to confirm that. I would anticipate that would be within the next, or by the end of this financial year, in order for this council to approve that plan and to have time to deliver on it. But I will confirm that detail for you. Thank you as well for the questions that you asked. And you've covered some of the responses you've had. RHAN, would it be appropriate for us to share those questions and those responses with committee as well? Post this. Yeah. Diolch.
Responses, John, how do they fit with your comments, please? Yep, come in now. Yeah.
Thanks you, and thanks everybody else. Yeah, I suppose I'd like to skip along really there. Can we make a recommendation then to council on this plastic bottle issue? Because I think we should seek other revenues for this, rather than using the use of plastic as a revenue gatherer. I don't think that's acceptable in these times. So, but people may disagree in the committee or whatever. So can we take it to a recommendation vote? I don't know.
You could. The recommendation would be to Cabinet rather than to Council. But as was mentioned earlier, you may want to put a notice of motion into County Council around it, so that something can be worked up as part of the budget setting process, perhaps.
So it's a question of which way you'd like to handle it. We can build something into our recommendations today that will go to Cabinet and eventually find their way through the Cabinet to Council. Or if you want to circumvent that, you could make a separate notice of motion to the next meeting of the full Council. So it's a question of which you think would be more effective to your point of view. Come back in. Yep.
Can I do both, or can we do both? Make a recommendation today, and also go down the full council route.
Good.
No, I'm just, sorry, as you're aware, I'm also new to this role. I'm not sure what the scrutiny committee would be recommending on to Cabinet, because the recommendations should be, maybe I'm wrong, so Rhian will correct me if I'm wrong here. The recommendations should be on what we're asking you to consider, which is this report, not the actual details of the projects which the report is reporting on. So in that case, I would suggest that putting a motion to the council would be the most appropriate way forward here, but stand to be corrected on that.
Yeah, that's true. When you do take a recommendation to Cabinet, it would and in this case, it could be on this report, because this is just an overall performance report. You would have to do a standalone recommendation and present a paper to Cabinet, but you would need evidence behind that to substantiate your recommendation. So we would need a bit of working up. Perhaps a notice of motion to council. What you would do there, you would gather the support of the council, and then the council would form a formal recommendation then. Perhaps, I don't know what their decision would be, but one thing would be they could consider is to perhaps that is looked into as part of the budget setting process going forward, which will give officers then time to sort of consider various options and various ways to fund any deficits that was occurring because of the reduction in the use or the sale of plastic water bottles in school. It would give them a bit more time.
Yes, John.
So we can't make a recommendation on individual items within the annual report. It's so we recommend the annual report as a whole or whatever. Is that correct?
Yeah. What you could do is you could identify aspects from within the annual report that you may want to look at further in scrutiny at future meetings. And that may be one of them. You may want to put a formal proposal form in for scrutiny to have an in-depth look at the plastics in school catering, but they have already done work on that. So, but if you want to do that, you can. But on this report today, basically, it's here for you just to be updated on the position, the report over the last year, and what's been achieved and what hasn't been achieved.
Okay. So, sorry, I'll finish up here then. So how do I take this notice of motion to the council forward? Where do I go with it from here?
That can be done if you have a word with Gary Williams, the monitoring officer. But
Right. Okay.
I'll ask him to contact you regarding it, so he can have a word with you.
Lovely. Thank you, Ria.
Okay. So I think the rest of your items, John, were more comments, I think, than questions, weren't they? I think. Were there any other questions we haven't addressed?
Sorry, Hugh. I think I was next.
Sorry. Now, Gareth. Okay. Right. Okay.
Okay.
Your first, please.
Right. Okay. So it's regarding the report on how we measure the reduction in poverty. So how closely do we measure the reduction of tackling poverty and the positive effects on areas of multiple deprivation? Because we've had areas of multiple deprivation in certain parts of the county for, decades. We've never tackled it. It needs to be tackled through this next 5 years. We need a strong and effective way of measuring that performance. And I think it ties into the fact that on the economic development and regeneration, particularly the tourism I picked out section, there is no measurable impact recorded currently. And I think we do need to, that's one of the indications that we've got a successful economic plan tied into the reduction in tackling poverty. So I think that is an area which will be closely followed and updated for the new corporate plan. So I was just wondering your views on that, Nicola. Thank you.
Come in there, Nicola, please.
I can. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Sandilands. In terms of measures for monitoring deprivation, there's nothing explicit about that in this report, actually, because the corporate priorities that we set ourselves don't include tackling deprivation at the moment. Okay, so that's why we report on our corporate plan, and at present the corporate plan that's just coming to a close doesn't explicitly reference deprivation. However, we are in the process of developing a new corporate plan at the moment. There'll be some work done with Cabinet. We have a council session that's scheduled for later in July, and the timetable overall is our goal is usually to try to develop a plan that can be ratified at full council in October. So you will have an opportunity to feed into that corporate plan what it looks like in the future, and I'm sure discussion about deprivation and some of the stubborn issues that we face in terms of that Wales Index of Multiple Deprivation will be given consideration.
Yeah, thanks. If I can just come back, I suppose what I'm looking for is when the different projects and that show up, is there a tick box to say, you know, they've considered how it's going to tackle poverty and what effect it's had? So it's cross-section across the different projects, but making sure that everybody considers that as a key priority. So I think thanks very much for the information, and I look forward to seeing how that's going to be implemented. So thank you.
Are there any other questions on the report that Nicola presented to us this morning? No. In that case, I'm going to go to the recommendations in that case, when I find them. Page 18. Right, sorry to keep you there. So the recommendations are that it is recommended that Performance Scrutiny Committee considers and comments on the report, which I think we've done fairly extensively this morning, and agrees any further actions required to respond to any performance-related issues highlighted within the report. So I'm just wondering, Rhiannon, if you can advise us here, is there anything we could build into those recommendations that reflect the questions both from Councillor John and Councillor Gareth?
Yes, I think we can. I think we can say that that we received the report as provided, but that there were questions raised in relation to carbon reduction, active travel, the use of plastics and deprivation, and weave them into that recommendation, and then that, you know, that we will be looking at them going forward.
Well, are the members happy that that covers the events this morning? Because of course it will be open to, yes, so somebody move then that we make those recommendations, so at least we're building into recommendations today the comments that have been made in debate in the last few minutes. So will somebody move that for me?
Move.
Yeah, and seconded by John. I think, John. Is everybody in favour of that? Thank you. And on the subject of getting something before a scrutiny committee, which I can see Councillor John will need to do, Rhiannon will explain that later on in the agenda. So if you could just wait for that, please. So we now go on then to item 7, which is the Corporate Risk Register review. And this is to consider a report by the Strategic Planning and Performance Officer and the team leader, copies enclosed, and seek committee's views on the amendments made to the Corporate Risk Register as part of the recent review. So again, Councillor Gwyneth, is that yourself?
Yes, Chair, diolch yn fawr iawn.
Thank you.
Felly, ie, eto swn i'n hoffi cyflwyno'r adroddiad yma, sydd yn cynrychioli'r wybodaeth ddiweddara sgynnon ni am adolygiad mis Chwefror o'r gofrestr risgiau gorfforaethol. Ac, wel, i ddod ar manylion ynglyn â hynny, mae gennym ni Emma Horan yn fan hyn, felly lle drosglwyddo i Emma. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Fine. Thank you very much. So Emma, if you can take us through the report, please.
Yep, sure. Diolch yn fawr iawn. So, as we talked briefly this morning about risk, this is one of a report of the most recent structured review of the Corporate Risk Register, which we started in February this year. So we're providing this report for information, and we're asking that you consider and comment on the amendments made to the corporate risk register, and also note the new summary document at Appendix 3, which summarises all of the current corporate risks. So as I described this morning, for those that were in attendance, the corporate risk register is jointly owned by Cabinet with the senior leadership team. I'd just like to maybe clarify, correct some wording at 4.1 to say that it was more of a, we do 2 structured reviews rather than formal. I think we've like to correct that choice of words there. So it's reviewed in a structured way with all risk owners, then it goes through to cabinet briefing. So following each of those structured reviews, so following being presented to cabinet briefing, it then comes to this committee for your input and is then shared with governance and audit committee. Every report that we provide on the latest structured review, we will always give you a link to the previous review so that you can track any changes that take place from one review to another. You'll note that the corporate risk register is large. It is in its complete form at Appendix 1. Again, like performance, the reason that it's long is because we now use more words, if you like, with the absence of being able to use any kind of colour scheme in line with accessibility standards. You'll also note in Appendix 1 that the lead members for each risk were those that were in place at that point in time. So as things develop now, we will need to work with our new lead members to identify the appropriate lead for the corporate risks and make sure that they're fully up to speed and involved in the controls in relation to those. I'd like to briefly take you through section 4 from 4.6 on. And I just want to highlight some of the kind of key moving and shaking that's happened across the corporate risk register. 4.8, we had previously escalated the risk in relation to health and safety incident resulting in serious injury or loss of life. We escalated it, or it was escalated at the point in time when there was some concern about social distancing and how office space was going to be used during some of the controls in place around COVID-19. So those have been downgraded now in line with the downgrading in relation to COVID, and that's been brought back into an acceptable level of risk. Risk 16 in relation to 4.9 talks about the risk that we used to have about the impact of welfare reform, in brackets universal credit, being more significant than was anticipated. That was more about the systems and rollout of the new welfare reform at that point in time. That risk has been deemed to be not within the criteria requiring cabinet and senior leadership management. So that's been taken out of the risk register. That's not to say that there might not be other risks in relation to poverty, and those are talked about a bit later. Risk 18, this is a risk that has been escalated this time, which is around programme and project benefits not being realised. In kind of simple terms, it's what I was saying earlier about costs going up and that affecting the scope of projects and the budget of projects, and that is causing some stress to those projects. Okay, so that's why that's gone up. That reflects those broader economic challenges. That risk isn't within risk appetite. So some firmer controls have been introduced around more challenge around contingency planning and budget and all that kind of stuff, among other controls, which are listed in Appendix 1. Now in 4.11, I talk about a slight change to risk 36. That was always a risk that had been kind of focused on Brexit, but this has been reshaped recently. You'll notice in the corporate risk register, we've got risks that talk about finances and the impact on council finance and the financial environment and the impact on council finance. Risk 36 has been updated to think about and acknowledge risks in relation to the financial environment externally and businesses and communities. So that's changed since last time. The February review also identified 2 new risks. The first was about any future funding regime not allowing us to continue to support those vulnerable learners and disengage young people through the projects that we used to have called TRAC and ADTRAC because they were funded by EU funding. There was some hope or that there may still be some possibility that they could be funded through the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, but that hasn't been confirmed. So we're still looking for solutions, and for now it remains a very high risk. The final risk, which is a new risk that was identified and put onto the risk register in February, was about a risk that has been agreed across North Wales by social services directors, and that's why it's been put onto a corporate risk register. There's a new Welsh Government commitment to eliminate profit from the care of placements for looked after children. Whilst everyone across the region is in support of that, there is a risk of suppliers and those placements that they provide becoming unstable or unsuitable in terms of for the looked after children themselves. So that's a new risk that was put onto the register. The report very briefly talks about risk appetite, and at 4.15 you'll see that we've got 22 risks on our corporate risk register, and 2/3 of those, roughly 64%, are outside of our risk appetite. I think my own view is that we shouldn't necessarily be alarmed by that. It probably is a reflection of the fact that these are our most serious risks that we as a council are facing, and therefore many of them are not within our risk appetite. It's not where we'd want to be with them. That's all I want to say on that, and I'd be happy to take questions on any of the detail. Thank you.
Thank you for that report, Emma. Now, members, this is, as Emma's just explained, this is the corporate risk register. Emma's been through the risks that are in it at the moment and the variations. Are there any questions for her, please? No, 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 I don't think so. No questions. Lead member, do you want to comment on anything? No, no. And in the room, no, quite okay. Yep, fine. In that case, I'll take you then, as there's no questions, I'll take you to the recommendation, which is that the Performance Scrutiny Committee considers and comments on the amendments to the Corporate Risk Register in Appendix 1, including the status of each risk against our risk appetite statement, which is shown in Appendix 2, and notes the summary document that may be used by members and officers as an aid memoir, which is highlighted in Appendix 3. So that's the recommendation. Is anybody prepared to move the recommendation?
I'll do.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. And it's seconded by Councillor Paul here. Thank you. All in favour of accepting the report? Yeah, I think nobody voting against, is there? No. No. Thank you. Coordinator RHAN on my left here will take you through this report, and I would say to members, particularly members that have just arrived in this strange world of scrutiny, that if you do have any queries or anything, RHAN is absolutely the knowledge on this subject, so please consult and ask her and she'll put you on the right track. Thank you, RHAN.
Thank you very much. Don't believe every word he says, please. I'll take a bit of time going through this report today because it'll be brand new for some of you, and some of you were in attendance of the scrutiny training the other week, and you will probably realise what scrutiny can and can't do. But as has been mentioned earlier today, you can make recommendations, but you can't take decisions. Now, this is a standard item on your agenda at every meeting, and it's an important item because you need to make sure that the topics you're looking at are current and are relevant, and that basically you, by looking at them, you can influence and make changes in the long run. Now, you will see as Appendix 1 to that report the forward work programme which you've inherited from the previous committee. Your next meeting is scheduled on the 14th of July, and you have got 4 items on there already. Now, 4 items is the optimum amount we suggest as best practice, because it gives you sufficient time to debate in detail. Then that's this morning, we started at 11, so you had 2 hours really or more or less to discuss the items in front of you today. We usually start at 10 o'clock. Another practice we have been running previously, pre-COVID really, was to have a pre-meeting briefing session for all committee members, where you will have had the reports, you could go through them and pick out the items of interest for you, and to start devising a questioning strategy so that you can focus the debate at the meeting. Now, in the post-COVID world, or the living with COVID world, wherever we're in at the moment, that can be slightly easier actually, because we can do it virtually. So we don't have to sort of set anything up, especially in Rhythyn, you have to travel. So if you're happy, we can arrange for that to take place a few days before the actual committee meeting via Microsoft Teams. We can go through the areas of interest to yourselves and start planning some questions for the meeting itself. Now, the items on your forward work programme for July, there's a couple of items there on education. Mention has already been made this morning, I think, of the new curriculum for Wales. And they would like to bring you some information on that for you to scrutinise, have a good look at. It would also help you to get up to speed with the new changes in the education framework in Wales. And also there's a report there on additional learning needs transformation and the impact that is having on the council. For education related items, we have statutory education co-opted members who are members of a committee when it discusses education. We have vacancies for 5 on the council here, but at the moment we've only got 3. We've got a representative from the Church in Wales, the Roman Catholic Church, and the primary parent governor sector. We've got vacancies at the moment for a secondary parent governor sector and a special schools parent governor sector. But the 3 members we currently have will be joining you at the next meeting for the discussion on those 2 items. And like yourselves, they are full voting members for those items. The other 2 reports which you've got on for July are the draft Director of Social Services annual report, which comes to you on an annual basis before it goes to County Council for approval. And then there's a new one which officers are very keen for you to have a look at. And I think it's one that may be of concern as well, is the Social Care Market Stability Report. So they want to make sure that what they've assessed as the potential future needs for social care going forward, that they've got everything included in that assessment, and so they want your input into it. So if you're happy, those are the items on your next committee agenda. Now, having items on future agendas, we have got a process which we've established here a few years ago, and in Appendix 2 to your report, you will see a form which we ask members to complete if they think scrutiny should be looking at something. Now, like Councillor Harland has raised a number of matters this morning, which you may want scrutiny to have an in-depth look at, That's the form you'll need to complete. It asks you about various different matters, and on the back of it, there's this test that is applied. When that form is then submitted to the scrutiny chairs and vice chairs group, which considers the request based on the paper test at the back of it, which is public interest, the ability to have an impact, and that is key. That scrutiny, there's no point in scrutiny having information about something. The information has to enable scrutiny to have an influence, to make recommendations, to change things or to shore things up. If it's a performance matter, yes, you can also have a look at it. Does it affect the entire county or a large population in the county? That is also key. If it's a very local matter, what will happen is the scrutiny chairs and vice chairs group probably won't accept it onto a scrutiny work programme. They might refer it onto a member area group or somewhere similar. And replication, we want to make sure the scrutiny isn't duplicating work that's taking place somewhere else, so we can get the best value out of it. Now, any one of you can fill that form in at any time, and then if you send it back to me, I'll make sure that the scrutiny chairs and vice chairs group at that next meeting will consider that request. If you need any help with filling it in, please contact me. That's no problem at all. At Appendix 3 to your report, you will see the Cabinet Forward Work Programme. That's there for information for you, really, just in case you spot anything on there that you think might merit coming to scrutiny before it goes to Cabinet, or if there's anything there you're unsure of. And then in Appendix 4 is just basically an update on the recommendations from your last meeting. So when you get your next meeting in July, the recommendations from today will appear on that document with the progress on them. There usually is another agenda item on scrutiny agendas, which is called feedback from committee representatives on boards and groups. Now, that isn't there today because as yet, we haven't appointed anybody to serve on the committee's behalf on any council boards or group. But when we do, that'll be your opportunity then to feed back to the committee on the discussions that have taken place at those groups. There may be items there that may draw your attention, that may benefit from scrutiny. So there's a process anyway, you can suggest that they're escalated to scrutiny and that form again can be used. On that form, we've got a similar form that members of the public can use if they want to bring anything to scrutiny's attention, and also if officers want to bring reports to committee. So it's a fair process for all, if you like. Scrutiny in the past council, the scrutiny chairs and vice chairs group did look at the type of things that scrutiny should be focusing on, and they all agreed that it should be budget savings and financial pressures, achievement of the corporate plan objectives, which is part of that work you've done this morning. That will also come into play for this new council, and any other items agreed by the scrutiny chairs and vice chairs group following that proposal process, and any urgent or unforeseen or high priority issues that might come to light that probably we've all missed during the course of the term. And also towards the end of the council term, they looked at supporting the council's recovery from the COVID-19 and responding to the COVID-19 and basically bringing services back to business as normal. So those are the kind of things that we're looking at. So I think that's me done for today. If any comments or questions?
Any questions for RHAN? No. Well, in that case, I can move to the recommendations, which we consider the information provided, approve, revise or amend the forward work programme as we deem appropriate, though I don't think we do wish to amend it at the moment, and determine whether any key messages or themes from today's meeting should be publicised via the press and social media. Again, I don't know whether there was really anything appropriate there today. I appreciate this has been a learning curve for us all this morning, no less me. I think we'll find the scrutiny process more clearer when we're actually dealing with technical officers, if I can put it like that. So if somebody's coming in from, I don't know, highways to talk about grass verges, at least you're going to have the appropriate technical officer here to deliver your questions at, and that's really the way forward. Where today we've been restricted to 2 items, and it's been these really 2 big items about self-assessment and corporate risk, but there's nothing that we've been able to get at, so we say, a technical officer over. And I think once we get into that phase of the process, I think you'll find it all becomes clearer. But thank you very much, everybody, for coming today. Yeah. And I hope we haven't discouraged anybody with the first meeting of the present series of performance scrutiny meetings. And I hope we'll all go together as a team going forward. And I'm quite sure out of today's meeting, RHAN is going to be receiving a number of proposal forms. They will go to the scrutiny chairs and vice chairs group and for approval, hopefully, and come back then to the committee for debate. And then, for instance, John asking about larch trees, we would have the appropriate technical officer here for him to question personally. And that, I think, is going to be the way forward. You will do. It's proposed by Paul. Can we second the recommendations? Thank you. Yeah, that's coming from Ellie. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for your time today. As I say, if you have any queries, please contact RHAN and she will make sure that you get the correct answers, I hope.
Lovely.
As well, the questions which Councillor Harland sent in beforehand, I had a comment from the officers today that was really useful. So if any of you want to use that practice, by all means, you can send them to me, and then I can sort of disseminate them out to the various officers to get your responses. But yeah, by all means, do that.
And the other matter we just touched on was the principle of having a pre-meeting remotely, where we can go through the agenda together informally, and people can flag up the sort of questions they might like to ask. That's really the process, isn't it?
Yeah,
We have adopted that, haven't we?
Yeah, if you're happy as a committee to do that, we can arrange it a couple of days before the next meeting in July. So we can, it's more of an informal discussion about the topics that you think need, a good airing at that meeting.
It's sometimes quite useful, I've found in the past on the different scrutiny committees I've been on, that you can spot something like, for instance, plastic containers in school meals, and then we can decide who's going to ask the question, really, rather than 3 people all try to ask the same question at once. So that's really more just to steer the progress of the meeting when we actually get the officers in front of us. So happy to do that, everybody. Yeah, good, lovely. In fact, I think at this point now I can close the meeting and thank everybody for their attendance. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.